Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1.
Ooh. Yeah, this one.
It can be a little bit intimidating.
It can be. A lot of people get kind of freaked out when they see it the first time.
Yeah.
But it's pretty straightforward once you break it down.
Yeah, and that's why we're here today. So for Task 1, you are going to be given a visual.
Right.
And you have to write a summary of it.
Yep.
It could be a graph, it could be a chart, it could be a diagram.
And you got to do it all in 150 to 190 words.
Yeah, that's the word count target. And here's the kicker. There's no conclusion.
That's right. Just straight facts.
Just the facts, ma'am.
No opinions, no interpretations. Just report what you see.
Okay, so that's interesting. It's like we're journalists.
Exactly. You're presenting the data clearly and concisely without any fluff.
No Shakespearean sonnets about the data then.
No flowery language needed here. Just get straight to the point.
Okay, so no conclusion.
Nope.
Word count is 170 to 190.
Ideally, yeah, hit that target. Don't go under.
And just report the facts objectively.
You got it.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get the picture. So where do we even begin with this report? I mean, if there's no conclusion, is there still an introduction?
Oh, yeah, definitely still an introduction. But keep it super short. 1 or 2 sentences max.
Okay, so shorter than a normal essay introduction.
Much shorter.
Okay, got it.
All you need to do is rephrase the instructions and state what type of visual you're working with. So you could say something like, this graph shows.
Okay.
Or the diagram illustrates.
So simple and straightforward.
Exactly. No need to overthink it.
All right, no overthinking. Now, I've heard some people say you should never mention specific numbers in Task 1. Is that true?
That's a common misconception, actually. While you don't want to overload your report with numbers, using them strategically can really strengthen your analysis.
Okay.
Especially when you're talking about key features like those peaks and valleys or trends, that kind of thing.
So it's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. Concise but detailed.
But how do we know what details to focus on? Especially when we're dealing with all those different types of visuals. I mean, graphs, tables, diagrams, they all seem so different.
Yeah, they do each have their own little quirks.
Yeah.
Let's start with graphs. Think of a graph like a story told through lines and data points. Your job is to unravel that story.
Okay, I like that. Unravel the story.
What are those axes telling us? What's the range of the data? Are there any significant trends or patterns we can see?
And don't forget, those peaks and valleys, those are like the exciting parts of the story.
Absolutely. And that's where comparative language comes in.
Ooh, yeah. Examiners love that.
They do. So when you spot a peak, compare it to other data points. For example, you could say sales peak in July, reaching a high of $10,000, which was double the sales in June. That paints a much clearer picture, right?
Wow, yeah. It's like adding those descriptive details that bring the graph to life.
Exactly. And it shows the examiner you're not just listing data points.
Well, you're actually analyzing them.
Yes, you're understanding the relationship.
Yes. Okay, that's really helpful. But what about those times when the graph throws us a curveball? You know those data points that just don't seem to fit the pattern?
Ah, yes. Those are anomalies. They're like little mysteries waiting to be solved. Let's say you're looking at a graph of average temperatures over a decade, and you notice a sudden dip in one particular year.
Okay, yeah.
That's your anomaly. Your job is to explain it. Was there an unusual weather event that year, something that caused that deviation from the normal pattern? Anomalies are your chance to show off your analytical skills. You can spot those subtle but potentially significant deviations in the data.
So we're like data detectives.
Exactly. Searching for clues and piecing together the puzzle.
I love that. Okay, I'm feeling a bit more confident about graphs now.
Yeah.
But tables, they always seem so intimidating. All those numbers and columns, I just want to run away.
I know they can seem scary, but honestly, tables are not as bad as they look. The key is to pay close attention to the column and row headings.
Okay, so like they're the key to understanding the whole thing.
Right. They provide the context you need to make sense of the data.
So don't be afraid to get specific with the data.
Yeah, exactly. If a particular cell stands out, call it out. For example, you could say, the table shows that the highest percentage of smartphone users, 75%, is found in the 18-25 age group.
Oh, that makes it so much clearer. It's like adding those little aha moments.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to feel a bit more confident about tables now. But what about diagrams? They seem like a whole other beast.
You know, diagrams often get overlooked, but they're actually pretty straightforward. They usually illustrate processes or cycles.
Okay, so like how a bill becomes a law.
Exactly, or the water cycle.
Okay.
Your task is to identify the starting point, the end point, and those major milestones along the way. You're essentially giving directions, but for a process instead of a location.
So we don't need to mention every tiny detail.
No, just those key turning points that move the process forward. Like in a diagram of the human digestive system,
Yep.
you would want to highlight key stages like ingestion, digestion, absorption, and elimination. No need to get bogged down in the minutia of every enzyme and chemical reaction.
Keep it big picture.
Exactly, concise and clear.
Got it. So we've covered graphs, tables, diagrams.
The trifecta of IELTS visuals.
Yeah. But how do we actually weave all this information together into a coherent report,
Yeah.
especially when we have to compare and contrast different elements?
Well, that's where the real magic happens. And that's a skill that will serve you well beyond the IELTS.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Let's dive into those strategies next. All right, so let's talk about comparison and contrast.
Yeah, because that's a big part of this task, right?
It's the bread and butter of good analysis.
Yeah.
And those IELTS examiners, they really want to see you using those skills.
Okay, I'm ready to show off my comparison muscles.
All right. Well, first things first, you don't have to give equal airtime to similarities and differences.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In fact, the differences often hold the most interesting insights.
So it's not a 50-50 split.
Nope. Think about it. If you're comparing two cities, it's more intriguing to talk about how their climates, cultures, or economies differ.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Right. It's more interesting than just saying they both have parks and restaurants.
Yeah, totally. Highlight the unique stuff.
Exactly. But how do we do that without sounding like we're just listing random facts?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, it's all about using strong comparative language.
Oh.
Words and phrases like whereas, in contrast, while, on the other hand, conversely. These are your secret weapons.
Ooh, I love those. They sound so sophisticated.
They do, and they really help to create clear distinctions and make your analysis flow smoothly.
Can you give us an example of how to use one of those in a sentence?
Sure. Let's say you're comparing two countries' energy consumption. You could say, while country A relies heavily on fossil fuels, country B has made significant investments in renewable energy sources. See how that while sets up that contrast?
That's so clear and concise. It's like those comparative words are little bridges that connect the contrasting ideas.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But what happens when the IELTS throws us two visuals to analyze?
Oh, yeah, the dreaded double visual.
Do we just double the work?
Not necessarily. The same principles apply, but you have even more flexibility.
Okay.
You could dedicate a paragraph to each visual, weaving in comparisons as you go. Or you could take a thematic approach.
Ooh, a thematic approach. What does that mean?
Well, let's say we have a graph showing population growth and a chart illustrating changes in housing construction.
Okay.
You could have one paragraph discussing the overall trends in both visuals, and then another paragraph focusing on how those trends relate to each other.
So like how population growth might be driving the need for more housing construction.
Exactly. You're exploring those connections and discrepancies, those moments where the visuals align and where they diverge.
Like discrepancies, you mean like when the visuals seem to contradict each other?
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds tricky.
It can be, but it's also where you can really show off your analytical skills. Let's say you're looking at a graph showing rising obesity rates and a table indicating a decrease in fast food consumption. That seems a bit contradictory.
Yeah, totally. What's going on there? Are people secretly snacking on kale chips when no one's watching?
Huh. Well, our job isn't to speculate on people's snacking habits.
Right.
It's to present those contrasting pieces of information objectively and then highlight potential factors that might explain the discrepancy.
So we'd want to acknowledge both the rising obesity rates and the decreasing fast food consumption. But then maybe suggest that other factors like sedentary lifestyles or increased consumption of processed foods could be contributing to the obesity trend.
Exactly. You're not drawing conclusions, but you're pointing out those potential connections and encouraging the reader to think critically about the data.
And even when dealing with discrepancies, there are often points of convergence.
Right. Like even though fast food consumption might be down overall, it could still be a significant factor for certain age groups or demographic groups.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's like we're looking for those subtle nuances in the data.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture now. It's like we're not just summarizing the visuals, we're weaving a story, highlighting the connections, the contrasts, the surprises hidden within the data.
I like that. Weaving a story.
Yeah. But what about those times when the IELTS throws us a real curveball? Those visuals that are linked in some way, but not in an obvious compare and contrast kind of way.
Yeah, those are the really interesting ones.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll talk about next. So we're talking about those tricky situations.
Right, where the IELTS visuals
Yeah.
seem connected, but not in a straightforward compare and contrast kind of way.
Exactly. It's like they're connected,
Yeah.
but they're not directly comparable.
Yeah, and they're not like cause and effect.
Right.
But they're still related.
It's like they're whispering, hey, there's a deeper story here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got to work for it.
You got it. These linked visuals, they often need a more sophisticated level of analysis.
Yeah.
It's about seeing that bigger picture,
Yeah.
Understanding how all the pieces fit together.
So it's less about listing similarities and differences.
Yeah.
And more about uncovering the underlying narrative, that thread that connects those seemingly separate visuals.
Exactly. It's like you're a detective,
Okay.
piecing together clues from different sources to solve a case.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so let's say we're given a map showing deforestation patterns
Okay.
and then a graph illustrating changes in biodiversity over time.
All right. I see where you're going with this.
So I see the connection, but it's not a direct comparison.
Right.
It's more like one visual is providing context for the other.
Exactly. That deforestation map, it's like the backdrop.
Yeah.
The setting for the story of biodiversity loss that's shown in the graph.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You could say something like, as deforestation has intensified in key regions.
Shown in the map, biodiversity has experienced a corresponding decline, as illustrated in the graph,
Okay.
highlighting the interconnectedness of these environmental challenges.
Oh, that's good. I like that. So we're not just reporting the facts.
Mhm.
We're revealing the relationship between them.
Exactly. That cause and effect.
It's like that ripple effect.
Right.
One thing leads to another.
And that's what those examiners are looking for, that ability to synthesize information,
Okay.
to see beyond the surface and connect the dots.
But still keeping it objective.
Right. No personal opinions,
It's just the facts.
no unsupported claims.
Okay, so we've got those cause and effect relationships. What other types of connections might we see?
Well, you might see visuals that show complementary trends or processes.
Okay.
For example, you could have a diagram illustrating the stages of product development,
Okay.
followed by a chart showing the corresponding increase in research and development spending.
Oh, so it's like one visual is the what and the other is the why. Yeah, exactly. You could say the diagram outlines the key stages in the product development cycle,
Okay.
while the chart reveals a parallel increase in R&D investment,
Okay.
suggesting a strategic allocation of resources to support innovation.
Ooh, parallel increase. I like that.
It really highlights that connection,
Yeah.
that synergy between those two processes.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so even when those connections are subtle,
Uh-huh.
it's our job to bring them to light.
Yes. Guide the reader
Uh-huh.
through that data landscape.
Oh, sometimes those visuals might even present conflicting information.
Right?
It's like the IELTS is testing our ability to deal with those complexities.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Like those obesity rates and fast food consumption we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
It's like those visuals were having a little debate.
I like that, a data debate.
Yeah.
So in those cases, we need to acknowledge those discrepancies,
Okay.
highlight those potential factors that
Gotcha.
might be contributing to the conflicting trends,
Mm-hmm.
and just emphasize that, sometimes the data doesn't tell a simple story.
It's like real life. It's messy, it's complex, and sometimes there aren't any easy answers.
That's a great way to put it.
This has been such a helpful deep dive.
It really has.
I feel like I've leveled up my data analysis skills.
I think so, too.
Like I've gone from data novice to data detective.
You're ready to take on any IELTS visual?
Yeah, I am. And to you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you the tools and the confidence to conquer the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. Remember, it's not just about summarizing those visuals. It's about uncovering those stories they tell,
Yeah.
those connections they reveal, the complexities they embrace. So until next time, happy writing.